Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I have to admit, it's kind of a my bad thing that for several years that we've been doing this show, people would call during this month because it's Alzheimer's Awareness Month and say, would you do something on Alzheimer's? And I just balked because it's a downer. There isn't a lot of good news all the time to report. But with the illness and passing of former President Ronald Reagan, and people are becoming more attuned to it, and I think they want to know more and need to know more according to the numbers that we're seeing these days. My guest this week, I am proud to present both of them. Dr. Karl Kozlowski of the UNO Gerontology Department has been involved a lot in researching ways to help caregivers so that caregivers can do it better and feel better during that very trying time. Also with us today is Connie Kudlicek. She is the Executive Director of the Midlands chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, and they're leading the way in trying to raise money and bring awareness to the general population. Thank you. Long introduction, but again, I have to apologize for not having you all here sooner. It's a tough thing to talk about for a half an hour, and unless people are touched by it, that they won't go, I don't want to hear about that.
Exactly. It's very difficult these days, though, to even go grocery shopping or go to the beauty shop, go anywhere, and people will say, well, what do you do? And talk about being involved with the Alzheimer's Association and that individual not being touched in some way.
See, it's just
amazing.
The difference, better diagnosis, earlier diagnosis. What is it? 1 out of 3 people knows somebody, and 1 out of 10 has a relative. Something
yes.
along those lines.
And with increased longevity, people are, on average, are living more of their allotted lifespan. So the age is a big risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So a larger proportion of people are showing up with.
We used to there was a phase we went through where we said there's so much cancer around. Well,
yes.
if you live long enough, you might even have several and be cured of the first 5, and the last one will get you. Now, after you've cured those 5 cancers, you have a better shot of getting another cancer or getting Alzheimer's and some other degenerative kinds
probability
of diseases.
Increases with age, yes.
So let's start with the fact that Ronald Reagan's passing, his illness, Nancy Reagan's rather openness, particularly toward the end about, we will maybe talk about stem cell research and the controversy over that, but it made it a household discussion as his life came to an end, did it not?
Very much so. I think when President Reagan even announced that he had Alzheimer's disease, it was like a permission for the public, the general public, to start talking about it. And people coming to us in greater numbers, reaching out to the Alzheimer's Association for assistance. It was like giving these people permission to say, I do have this, or I might have this. I need to go and check this out.
Well, both of you, try to paint a picture for me. Let's go back 10 years, roughly, give or take a month. And tell me when someone was diagnosed and the spouse or loved one that had to care for them, what did they know about it then? Did they even envision what they were going to go through? Were they able to prepare for it?
It's changed a lot in the last 10 years, for sure. Some of the dementias that are now being diagnosed didn't exist in the medical community 5 or 10 years ago. So there's that.
You mean they didn't exist or they weren't diagnosed?
They weren't identified. They hadn't been identified clinically. Now the diagnostic procedures have changed a lot, and so we have better means of diagnosing the dementias and differentially diagnosing the dementias, telling the difference between Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia and some of the frontal lobe dementias. So there's simply more awareness. People know more about it now than in years past.
Now, does that allow on the front end with some of the advances they've made in medication to maybe slow down the inevitable a bit?
Very much so. I think being smarter about the diagnosis enables us, the medical community and the chapter, to partner with the family and the individual throughout the process. And some of the medications that are available now can slow down that process. So
Although
that
they
they're-
might have some side effects.
Yes,
some of
there
them.
can be some side effects.
Certainly.
But if it can slow down that process, we have a person in society that is continuing to contribute to society at a much longer time period. And especially in the much younger individuals, people in their 50s and 60s, that we're seeing more of now.
Are we seeing more of this early onset Alzheimer's, or or are we
it's-
just figuring it out now?
Proportionally, it's still quite rare, but it's a significant number. About, I think, I've heard the number 15%. I'm not sure if that's correct.
Which would be
of,
15% of about 4.5 million, which
That's
is
right.
the number,
That's a substantial
closest
number of cases,
guesstimate they have right now, and the number of people that
And
have it in this
It
country.
can occur as early as 30s, 40s, 50s in that population. So
When I was growing up, you know, the worst fate that could come to you is to get cancer.
Yes.
I mean, that was the one that we knew most about, dreaded the most, but and I hate to say good thing about it, if you were to die of cancer, generally, on average, it would take less time than it would for an Alzheimer's patient.
That's right.
If it were terminal. And so, as awful as that was, you know, the one dying often had more time to prepare and the say goodbye, but the one was the caregiving, the family, it was very hard on them. And now with Alzheimer's, you're dealing with sort of that situation, but a little longer and a little more complicated in some ways.
it's complicated by the way we provide medical services to people as well. If you're lucky enough, in some ways, and this seems odd to say, to have cancer, then that's generally covered under Medicare, and you get the treatment you need. For long-term care, and what Alzheimer's patients typically require is custodial care. That's generally not as accessible, and people tend to pay for more of that out of their own pockets, or under the Medicaid program for long-term care. Connie knows more about this than I do, but there is sort of an unfairness in the system, in the sense that the diseases differ in that regard in terms of getting help.
I think the need, as you said, is very often custodial, and that's where we deal with a lot of caregiver issues, because if we can keep the caregiver healthy, we are going to keep the person with the dementia in the home longer. There's less cost to society, but there's greater cost to the family at that point.
I have known people that it literally sapped the income and the strength in every facet of strength, mental, emotional, and I often thought, and this was several years ago that I happened to know, three very close amount of time, that there's got to be a better way. There's got to be either some respite care or some way to bring people into the home. I don't know, and we're still dabbling with the best kinds of formulas, are we not?
Not everybody finds the same sorts of services equally useful, and people in objectively the same circumstances, caring for a family member with Alzheimer's disease, may or may not use respite. But it is the case that the family does bear the burden for not only the financial, but the psychological and emotional costs of the disease.
We almost need, you know how we have cafeteria plans for our health insurance and what we want in our insurance benefits package. We should almost need a cafeteria plan so that the caregivers can pick and choose the kinds of things that are generally less expensive than institutionalization to help them just have the break, even have a vacation, as weird as that sounds. Or just proper training, better training. And then I think of the rural areas of, greater Nebraska.
Oh, yes.
Is the training, the helping, the support as accessible to them?
No, it is not. When you talk about respite, adult day services, those kind of things, they are very lacking in the rural areas. But I think one of the challenges we as an organization, the chapter, faces is getting the family to the stage where there's a comfort level of using those kind of services, and helping them to realize that if they do not utilize some of those services because of cost or whatever, that the family and the direct caregivers is going to suffer because of that. Also, many of those services can help the person with the dementia to maintain some social activities, social interactions, so it can be very beneficial also, but it's very difficult to let go of the care, the direct care of your loved one, if that person cannot relate to what's happening, if they cannot say what they like, what they don't like. Caregivers worry about, if someone comes in and takes care of my loved one, do they know how to react to them appropriately?
And
so training is essential.
There is also the whole issue of control.
Yes.
If you're the caregiver, you have no control in a sense. I mean, this thing called Alzheimer's makes your life and your loved one's life out of control, lack of control, nothing, it's set you in a tailspin.
Absolutely.
And so anything you kind of can control, you feel it's your job to control that one or two things that you can control, because that's really all you can do, you think.
And that's been one of the great contributions of the Alzheimer's Association, because they help train caregivers in to understand what they can do and what they can't do, what they should do and perhaps what they shouldn't do. And there are some things that are perhaps better left to other people, and that ensures a higher quality of care. So even though the family thinks that it's their responsibility and that they provide the best care, that's not always true.
Because you can end up sick. I mean, I bet that happens more often
Yes.
than not, especially in this time of the year when you don't want to get sick anyway, and you can get sick with the flu or whatever. But that's the worst thing you want to do, is get down physically, emotionally, and the whole ball of wax, and then you feel even more guilty and worse. I mean, it's a vicious cycle, I would guess.
I think what our objective is as the organization here in Omaha and the Midlands is to give a caregiver a choices. If they feel they only have one avenue to go down, and that doesn't fit their lifestyle, that doesn't fit where their loved one is at in the disease process, then it's very frustrating. But if you can give them choices that possibly fit different times, what works today might not work tomorrow. So help them to raise their comfort level of, you do have choices, and we're going to work with you to help you to identify the appropriate choices at that given time when you reach out to us. I like to look at it as we partner with the family. If we can get that family to come to us early in the disease process, we can partner with that family and make that process easier for them.
How good is insurance and/or Medicare or Medicaid at contributing to these lesser expensive things that just help out and, like I said, keep that little system called the family working?
Well, each state has its own Medicaid program now, and people qualify for that.
Because you often can lose your savings through this whole
by
process.
reason
too.
of indigency. So you qualify for it by making yourself financially eligible, which means divesting yourself.
Spending down.
Spending down, exactly. So, and each state has its own program in terms of what it will provide and what it'll allow. But it is the case that you have to qualify for it. So that's devastating to a lot of families, and families differ in that regard. The services that are provided are not equally useful depending upon the nature of the caregiving relationship. For example, spouses use different services than adult children who are taking care of a parent. Spouses tend to use less respite. They tend to use a lot less probably of every service because they see that as their job. Children who may be taking care of their own children and trying to take care of their parent and perhaps managing a job as well, they tend to be willing to take whatever help they can get in many cases.
And just a statistic that we deal with when we talk to businesses, because many of the corporations now are offering child care within the corporations. Some are looking at some type of adult care programs also. We look at about $60 billion annually in downtime, lost time, less productivity to businesses. And so, we can give, especially adult children, a lot of support in choices. But if they have to go to work every day worried about who's taking care of mom or dad, or are they safe? When they come to work, they're not thinking about their work, they're thinking about the home environment. So that's a population that we as an organization are just really beginning to reach out to, and that's more or less that baby boomer population.
Are churches or denominations looking at that as one of their, take some of the national organizations that we have, sort of groups in Omaha, for instance, would be like Lutheran Family Services and then Catholic Family Services, that you find them all over. Are they, some of those groups, looking nationally at
those groups have
ways to
always, supported the family, but faith-based initiatives have, of course, been more popular now with the present administration. And
I'm talking about as a pastoral service, or maybe a service like the Salvation Army that doesn't serve by denomination. They serve communities, but they do need finances to do that. And it could be either way.
I'm not
sure.
familiar with some of the faith-based, like Presbyterian Outreach has developed a respite program, in-home respite program. And in fact, last year, working with the chapter, they contributed over 10,000 respite hours free, in-home respite hours free to families. So they have a real strong focus, but I'm not familiar with a lot of other agencies. And I think a lot of that is that we're dealing with a population that is very different. You need to have specific training to work with someone with dementia.
Well, I guess
and that's a whole aspect of it.
The question I was asking, is this going to have to happen? I'm looking at sheer numbers of baby boomers. Everybody's going to have to sort of get in on the act, I think, as part of, let's say, pastoring in your religious community, not the faith-based initiative thing with the government working, but just as pastoring to a group of people there's going to be a certain percentage that have Alzheimer's, a certain percentage who are the children of Alzheimer's patients or the spouses. It's going to grow just because of the baby boomers.
Well, these are important social issues, and sometimes when we think about Alzheimer's disease, we focus on its impact on the victims or the patients themselves, or the family caregivers or the family members that are affected, but it affects all of us. And long-term care is going to be an issue even for the non-demented population with the baby
we're going to be
boomers.
paying for it, and
That's right.
There's talk that the federal situation, and this is not a political statement, but that just with what is expected from Social Security, government pensions, Medicaid, and paying on the debt, and a few other things, that's about all the federal government's going to be able to do. Now, that's not a totally worst case scenario, but it's a very possible scenario, which means they're not going to be able to give money to the states that has been passed on as much for Medicaid. We need some long-term strategy work, do we not?
Much of it has been kicked back to the state level. I recently finished evaluation of a large federal program, and I traveled to a number of states, and it's surprising how different the approaches are in terms of the services they provide, or whether they even see it as something they should do. And it's at this time there's no coherent federal program to address this issue.
No, and when, Carol, you mentioned earlier 4.5 million approximately today. By the year 2050, we're looking at 11 to 16 million individuals with dementia. That's potential to break the system, financially break the system. So we have to, first of all, we have to find ways of slowing down that disease process. We would love to find a cure, but we need to put dollars into research to find appropriate medications to cure this and to slow it down.
Absolutely.
So again, it's like, we're looking, there's so many other things that we've heard about in the news with Christopher Reeve, the we're back here, when things are
spinal cord
injury. Thank you.
Yes.
And then of course the Parkinson's with Michael J. Fox and others. And these are very viable things, and we're not even talking about cancer, viral things that have exploded. HIV. They're even talking now about investing money in the smallpox to to find, in case somebody gets a hold of it for bioterrorism, finding a kid. So that's
Yes.
money that's going to be diverted worldwide. So it's not just the United States. I mean, this is how is the world looking at Alzheimer's? When you go to these national conferences, do you hear any reports? Is it similar on the agenda of, let's say, Western European countries, or
Well, you know,
who have a lot of old people?
my experience has been that it's not even well understood in certain areas of this country, and there are cultural differences and regional differences, and worldwide. I could only guess, but if what's going on in this country is any indication, it's probably very poorly understood. And a lot of it has to do with the longevity in the country, because if there aren't a lot of old people making it to old age, having the opportunity to acquire this disease, you know, it's less important than things that attract their attention sooner, quite frankly.
So let's say you two were the head honchos of the strategizing for the United States, or at least Nebraska, for the next. You're putting a 5 or 10-year plan together. Where would you put the money? Where would you put the emphasis, assuming you could get the money?
Well, I would have to defer to Connie because she's an executive director. I'm only a professor.
Depends on what campus you're at, where you're
Here in Nebraska, we've been working on a special project that's been funded through the Area Agency on Aging, and I think Carl has some familiarity with some of the information that's flowed out of that. But it's been a consumer-directed project, which gives people involved in it funds to purchase the kind of services they really need. And I think that is where the dollars are being spent on what's really needed by individual families, rather than an organization saying, this is what you need and this is what we'll provide. It's providing them choices again, but it also empowers them to make the decisions on what they really need. And I think, I feel that is very important. And also working through in Nebraska here, our area agencies on aging, they, in most cases, have their finger on the pulse of the communities, especially the rural areas, and know the needs. So directing them to meet the needs specifically for their areas, I think, is much more important than putting down a mandate and saying this is the way the dollar should be spent. And then supporting the families. 70% of these people with dementia or Alzheimer's disease live in the home. They are not institutionalized.
And they would prefer that, and the
Yes.
families would prefer that as long as they can.
So how do we support them? And again, it's very individual.
Nebraska has been in the forefront in this regard. The program that Connie mentioned, and I believe you wrote the grant for that,
Yes.
is very innovative because it has been recognized that one size doesn't fit all. You can open up an adult daycare center or an in-home respite program and lay out the game plan, how many hours a day it'll be open, how many days a week, and that sort of thing. But that program won't fit the bill for everybody. And what Connie's program has done is allow people to decide what they need and exercise some judgment in the management of this issue for themselves. And I think probably that's the direction things will have to go in the future, because it's so much more efficient, and it recognizes that not everybody needs the same thing.
There's been a lot of talk lately. Well, if you belong to AARP, you get things in the mail for nursing home insurance.
Yeah, sure.
And it's kind of, some things deal with fear, some things deal with practicality. Maybe it's a little bit of both. To buy that sort of thing. Are we going to have to be doing that for our families? Because the odds are that we will. Well, we're all. If we don't get Alzheimer's, we're still going to get old and need
That's
some
right.
probably
That's right.
extended care.
And when you talk about nursing home insurance, what you're talking about is a much better product than 10 years ago. And it's a product that would help to assist with the costs of in-home care, adult daycare, again, looking at keeping the person in the community, not necessarily nursing home. No one ever wants to go to a nursing home.
And again, assuming
But-
it's a plan that gives you kinds of choices.
That's right.
It's like you don't have to reach the so bad stage
Yeah.
that you have to be institutionalized before it kicks in.
Right.
So it might be good to, hopefully they'll get some flexibility in these plans and some options.
It's been a difficult product to market because it's not clear what the costs will be, how much is sufficient,
Yes.
what what it will pay for, will what it pays for when you need it be sufficient, for example. So it's a consumer-related issue, and as I understand it, Consumer Reports took a somewhat different stance.
I'd hate to be
with
the
respect
actuary that has to figure
Yeah.
out for the
Figure that
insurance
out.
companies the risk and the risk pool and what to charge and whatever.
Yeah, so-
We have just a few minutes left, and I guess I want to say, let's talk again directly to the people of, let's say, Nebraska, both here in the metro area, I call the Omaha-Lincoln megalopolis, and greater Nebraska, about the good news. Somebody might find out tomorrow that they're going to be facing this in their family. What's the good news? What's it
good
gonna,
news
what would
is
you
there's-
encourage them to do?
There's a lot of research going on right now, even here in Omaha. So that is the good news. We have a lot of very bright minds looking into this. But I think what I would, if someone called in our helpline and said, my loved one has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, what do I do? Well, first of all, make sure you have a complete assessment. That the diagnosis is a diagnosis of elimination of a lot of other things that could cause the signs we see. And then plug into what's available in your community. Look at your financial resources. Get all legal documents in place. As long as the person is able to work with the family, the person with dementia is able to work with the family, that helps. That helps them to put their mind at ease. We have programs for the early diagnosed, support groups, where these individuals will come and develop relationships with other people who are newly diagnosed. So there's a lot of things out there, but get involved, find out what's available in your community, and then ask what is not available. Where can I get what I need?
So it's better to be proactive at that
Very
point
much
than to
so.
wait till you feel sort of trapped by some of the circumstances that will evolve.
There's a great deal of help out there. Many of the programs are underutilized because people simply aren't aware of them. And Alzheimer's disease is a disease that affects families. And while there may not be a great deal that we can do for Alzheimer's patients right now, although much is in the pipeline, there's a great deal that we can do to help families, caregivers and family members cope with this really devastating disease.
And if you have an Alzheimer's activity in your area to raise money, you might be helping yourself down the road.
Absolutely.
Every
Very
little
much
bit.
so.
You know, we have so many priorities for fundraising these days. I want to thank you though for taking
Thank
the time
you.
to at least
Thank you
open
so
some windows. There are some windows to open in
Yes,
this
there are.
situation. Connie Kudlacek with the Alzheimer's Association Midland Chapter, and Dr. Karl Kozlowski, Department of Gerontology. You've seen their website for the association on our show. Check our website and you can get it there too. Have a good one.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.